the photographs of the babies, some of them were taken in the clinic when they were discovered, and it's what the police saw, exactly what the police saw and the crime scene investigators saw. Those bodies, though, were all taken to the medical examiner's office where they were cleaned and they were photographed in high definition. And those high definition photographs, which we are reproducing in this exhibition, are really, really extraordinary. There is one of those photographs, and it's the baby has a finger like that, like in admonition, pointing. And we just met a friend's baby the other day, a very new baby. The baby did exactly that. The baby did this little pointy thing, and it was exactly
it's
like
pointing at the camera.
It was exactly like that, and that's what people are going to see. Hi, my name is Anne McElhinney.
And I'm Phelim McAleer.
Welcome to the Anne and Phelim Scoop.
And I'm just checking if the microphone is working. Yes, it is. So, Anne McElhinney, what's on the show today?
Well, the big news that we want to talk about is on Friday, this Friday, our exhibition Evidence opens in Ohio. We are going to be talking to you today, about why that's important and why we're doing it in Ohio.
It's our photographic exhibition. It's an exhibition of crime scene photographs from the Kermit Gosnell case. So we're taking this American idea of crime scene photographs, which have been photo exhibitions for decades. And we're taking it to the Kermit Gosnell case in Ohio, which is an important place at this moment. So what else is on the show? Josh Fox. Once a liar, always a liar. He lied about fracking and devastated communities in New York and Pennsylvania, allowed Putin to invade Ukraine. So why wouldn't Josh Fox invent lies about Hamas, the Hamas slaughter in Israel? We bring you exclusive news about the madness that's going on in Josh Fox's brain. He's the director of Gasland. You may remember him as
Great friend of yours, Phil.
Great friend of mine, yes, friend of the program. And Barbara Ferrer.
Oh, my friend Barbara Ferrer.
You love Barbara, don't you?
So Phelim hasn't told me what this story is about, so I'm kind of looking forward to it.
She's reared her terrible head again, and it's just as bad as you think. This woman's incapable of telling the truth. And don't forget, she was the one closing our churches, schools, restaurants, beaches. So stand by for her latest duplicity. You'll love it. And what else is on the show, Anne?
And BLM and Hamas. What a lovely couple. We're going to bring you the latest from their mad coupling.
Yes, their mad union. And campuses, college campuses, of course, are right there with Hamas. And John Huntsman is displeased, but I would say to John Huntsman, where have you been? We'll talk about that. And Australia has its Trumpian moment, or its Brexit moment for our British listeners. But the media won't tell you why. You really have to struggle to realise this is a Trumpian moment in Australia.
Huge sea change.
And we have an interview with Breitbart, John Nolte from Breitbart. John is one of the greatest writers in the English language. And we're going to talk to him about his new novel, Borrowed Time, which is a very, very interesting premise. You won't want to miss his interview. And we talk about other entertainment issues during the interview as well. So on the photographic exhibition, you can go to the website, evidencetheexhibition.com. That'll tell you all about it. It's the exhibition is in 1241 North High Street in
Columbus, Ohio.
So tell people what the exhibition is and how we came across the photographs, etc.
Well, people who've read the book will remember
the Gosnell book. So it's about the case of Kermit Gosnell, who was the Pennsylvania abortion doctor, the Philadelphia abortion doctor, who's now serving 3 life sentences for murder. He was an opioid dealer, a drug dealer. He ran a filthy abortion clinic in Philadelphia. Remember he was being charged, and there was a media blackout on the case. We've made a movie about it, which many of you funded. We've written a best-selling book on the matter. We've produced a best-selling podcast, one of the top 10 true crime podcasts. We had a play in New York, which the venue was cancelled, but the New York Times had to write about the play twice. So we're keeping this story in the headlines, and this is another way of keeping the story in the headlines.
Well, it's also a part of the story. As journalists, this is a part of the story that hasn't been told. Mm-hmm. Photojournalism has a very old and long and distinguished career. Photographs do something that words cannot do. If some of you have read, I think a lot of you have read the Gosnell book, and in the preface of the Gosnell book, I talked a lot about photographs and the fact that what happened in this case in relation to photographs. So when we were investigating this case, we got access to what was shown in the courtroom. So these photographs have never been seen before. These are extraordinary photographs that we got access to when we were doing the research for the Gosnell book, for the movie. And these photographs are extraordinary. And we've been kind of bothered by these photographs for years and trying to work out how we can release them. And we have come up with a great idea, which is to follow in the tradition of photojournalism, of these kind of journalistic pieces where photographs that are important are published. And this is what we're going to do. And we are having, our exhibition is opening this Friday in Columbus, Ohio. And these are a series of photographs of all kinds of things. There's photographs of the clinic itself, of the filthy rooms, the cats that were walking around. But most significantly, there are photographs that have never before been seen, of photographs of the babies that were discovered in the clinic.
Yeah. I mean, I particularly like, funny, there are photographs, as you say, of his victims, which we keep behind curtains, right? Yes. So when you go in, you'll see, evidence from his clinic. You'll see, I particularly like the banality of evil, because this was a workplace, right? This was a workplace with dozens of people. We clocked in, there was cards, there was in-jokes, there was little, you don't have to be crazy, but it works here, to work here, but it helps kind of posters. I like the banality. It's saying, this was a house of horrors, but this was allowed to happen. And this was this was an murder in plain sight. So there's that aspect to it. And you'll see all that. You'll get a real feel of the madness of what goes on behind these closed doors. Then at the rear of the exhibition.
So it's like a journey. So it's like a journey. You walk in, and actually I think that's one of the things that the curator has really done really brilliantly here, the artist that we've worked with. It's absolutely amazing, because you walk in and you gradually, things get worse as you move forward, but you're learning all the time, you're learning. And we have a multimedia type of, the way that this is presented is through a multimedia. People will be able to hear audio as well, from the podcast, and the actual voices of the investigators speaking as you walk through the exhibition. And as Phelim says, we're very careful that the pictures of the babies are at the back. And what's significant about the pictures of the babies, as Phelim said, they're behind black curtains, and they deserve that. And people shouldn't be, people can choose to look at them. But what they represent, some of them were murdered. Some of them were legally aborted. Some of them were illegally aborted past the 24-week, 6-month cutoff limit that there is in Pennsylvania. But what they all have in common, this is the really important point, I think, Phelim. What they all have in common is this is what you're going to get in Ohio if the ballot measure is passed. People should know. They would all be legal. So all of them would be legal. So that's what I think is the educational aspect of this. This is a journalistic piece. By the way, this is a journalistic piece that's not being told. And it's interesting. I wanted a reference. You remember in another episode of our podcast, we talked about the photograph of the century. You'll see it there, the Guardian newspaper talking about it, the photograph of the century. This was this extraordinary set of photographs that were taken by a photojournalist, a Scandinavian photojournalist, who took these photographs of children in the womb. And the photograph that won the prize, that became the photograph of the century, was this one of an 18-week-old baby. And there were other photographs in the series. Eventually he stopped using them because he didn't like that they were being used by pro-lifers. He didn't like that. He didn't like that they were being politicized. But it's interesting, the photograph tells the story. You don't need to say anything. There's nothing to say. There's actually nothing to say. You just look at the photograph. But I think what's important about these photographs is this one point, is this point that this is what it would look like. And if no one else is going to report this film, we need to do that.
Well, and I would also make the point that these are not taken by pro-life people. These photographs, most of the people I would say who took these photographs are probably pro-abortion, actually. They're crime scene investigators, they're medical examiners, people from the medical examiners, people from the FBI, people from the DEA, because Gosnell was also a huge opioid dealer. So these are taken for court proceedings. They're not slogans, they're not posters. So we're showing you, and the exhibition is called Evidence. So to find out more about it and the opening hours and all that in Columbus, Ohio, evidencetheexhibition.com. That's evidencetheexhibition.com. You can also, we're going to have the opening, the grand opening this Friday in Ohio on Friday evening. Write to us at the show. We'll get you tickets to the opening exhibition. So it's in 1241 North High Street in Columbus, Ohio, in the short north area, which is a funny place name to have or something, but apparently it's
it's the arts area.
Yeah. So it's evidencetheexhibition.com. I mean, the point, I think really I do like your point, Anne, that all these, some of them you say he was convicted for murder, some where he was convicted for illegal late-term abortions, some were legal, but every one of them under this new law in Ohio, this new referendum would be legal. And by the way, every one of them I think would be legal now in
many parts,
New York, California, which you don't hear in the media. You hear these sob stories about someone being denied an abortion somewhere. You don't hear that all these states are now making abortion legal up until 9 months.
So one of the other points I was going to make, just a little small point. So the photographs of the babies, some of them were taken in the clinic when they were discovered, and it's what the police saw, exactly what the police saw and the crime scene investigators saw. Those bodies, though, were all taken to the medical examiner's office where they were cleaned and they were photographed in high definition. And those high definition photographs, which we are reproducing in this exhibition, are really, really extraordinary. And I don't know, I hadn't said this to you before we started recording, Phelan, but there is one of those photographs, and it's the baby has a finger like that, like in admonition, pointing. And we just met a friend's baby the other day, a very new baby, 3.5-week-old baby, a friend's baby. And both of us had a quick look at each other. The baby did exactly that. And I don't know maybe what it is, but the baby did this little pointy thing. And it was exactly
like pointing at the camera.
It was exactly like that. And that's what people are going to see. So I think it's very important. And to remember again that these photographs, I think this is the strength of them. They are not part of anyone's campaign.
No.
They're not a campaign of any kind. These are evidence. That's why we call the exhibition Evidence. This is what it looks like.
Yes. And I would like to emphasize that there's other photographs. You learn the story of Kermit Gosnell's depraved life in many ways. He was a hoarder. He was a sexual harasser. He abused people. He was a drug dealer. He sold opioids to. He was one of the biggest opioid dealers through prescriptions in the Philadelphia area. You learn what goes on behind these closed doors. You learn what was allowed to go on behind these closed doors. And I mean,
for 17 years,
the National Abortion Federation went in, examined this clinic, said it was the worst clinic they'd ever seen, but didn't tell anyone. Just refused to give them credit, but just. The abortion is allowed. You can kill people if you're also giving abortion. And that's one of the lessons, I think, from this exhibition also.
I think it's worse than the National Abortion Federation, because obviously we know what their mentality is. Much, much, much worse than that is obviously the fact, and those of you who read the book know this, that 2 women died in the clinic, that report after report after report were sent in, complaint after complaint, from doctors, by the way, some of them handed in to the Department of Health and the Department of State in Pennsylvania, and nothing, zero was done for 17 years. And what's incredibly important about that, and I say it all the time, and every time I'm asked to speak, I talk about that, because why, like just being really super, super logical, why would you for any minute think that there isn't another Gosnell somewhere else? Why would you think that if in a place as regulated, as progressive as Pennsylvania, this man got away with it for decades? Anyway, we really want you to come to the exhibition. We want you to support the exhibition. This is incredibly important. Our plan for this exhibition is to bring this exhibition across the country. People need to know. People need to be educated. And this is a piece of journalism. We're extremely proud to bring this around the country. But we will do it with your help. Again, you helped us with the movie. You helped us tell this story so many times, and we are not finished yet. So if you could, please go to unreportedstoriesociety.com, unreportedstoriesociety.com, and support our journalism.
Yes, donate. We are not for profit, so it'll be tax deductible. But, it costs money. I mean, the exhibition is beautiful. We have hired some very professional people who wish to remain anonymous for obvious reasons. But the level of professionalism and dedication and detail-oriented and attention to detail, it's an amazing, amazing project. We're very proud of it. So go to evidencetheexhibition.com, 1241 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. But we can't do it without your help. So please go to unreportedstoriesociety.com, donate whatever you can, and it'll help make the exhibition, but it'll also help advertise it and get it out to the wider world. So moving on, unreportedstoriesociety.com. Moving on, Josh Fox, Anne,
Tell me.
Yes, once a liar, always a liar. As I say, he lied about fracking. He lied about breast cancer too. Do you remember that, Anne? Yes.
I know what Phelim's going to bring up now. This very unfortunate moment where we went to the
premiere of Gasland 2 in New York.
And I said to Phelim as we walked along towards the exhibition, whatever you do, Phelim, don't lose the run of yourself. Don't go completely nuts. Don't start shouting. So those of you who know me well possibly know what happened next.
Let's play that tape.
Oh no.
They're not letting us in.
They're not letting us in.
I've already been in. They won't let me in now.
Refund.
They won't let people into a film festival in New York City.
We have tickets. We have tickets.
We have bought tickets in New York
Won't let
City.
people into a film festival.
We're not.
Into a film festival there in New York City.
People into a film
And we reserved the right.
And we bought tickets.
Won't let people into a film festival in New York City.
Does Robert De Niro know?
I have two tickets. I have 2 tickets in New York City.
Does Robert De Niro know?
I've already been in.
Let me see your tickets.
You know what these guys are doing all over the country? They're doing 100 times worse than this.
Okay, so let's just go to the side and talk
Why
about
are we not allowed in?
and why are people not allowed to show a movie in the...
That voice is not my voice. That voice is not a random stranger. That voice shouting is not a random stranger. That voice is the voice of Anne Mickelhin.
Well, I think if you'd lie about breast cancer, you're deserving of somebody going nuts.
Well, we should put it in context. Actually, I suppose he had brought out a short movie called The Sky is Pink, where he said fracking caused a spike in breast cancer.
In the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Yeah, and the American Cancer Society, all these oncologists said, no, that's complete nonsense. He never withdrew the allegation, but he didn't put any of that, The Sky is Pink, into Gasland 2. Like, if you've got this rock solid evidence that it caused breast cancer, as I say, if there's proof, I would call for a moratorium on fracking.
Yeah.
So either he doesn't believe it, and if he believes it, why isn't it in Gasland 2? And it wasn't in Gasland 2. It's because he doesn't believe it, but he wants to keep the scaremongering lies out there. So he's now moved on to Israel. Josh Fox, I believe, is Jewish, but this is his post on Instagram. I follow on Instagram, so you don't have to. These attacks play into Netanyahu's hands. They give him justification for more murder, which in turn consolidates the sentiment of hatred for Jews. So it's all your own fault, Jews, this Hamas thing. And they're saying that was Netanyahu's intent the whole time. In fact, all of these participants. This is the lying, though. This is the appalling lying. It's hard for me to believe that corrupt Netanyahu didn't know about the attacks. Hard for me to believe that it was, quote, a failure, close quotes, of intelligence. He must have known, like Bush knew about 9/11. It plays into his genocidal ambition.
Oh my God. Okay, all right.
You didn't know that? Yeah.
He's a truther then.
He said, I mean, he's a very unique group. He's a 9/11 truther and Israel 9/11 truther. So that's the person who has destroyed the fracking industry in wide swathes of America, all over Europe. That's the man who made sure that Germany doesn't frack, UK doesn't frack, Ireland doesn't frack, and so that Putin was able to invade Ukraine because we still need him for his fuel and his gas. And he's a 9/11 truther, and he's a Hamas. He basically says Benjamin Netanyahu knew that 1,200 men, women, and children were going to be murdered.
More than knew, allowed it to happen. Allowed it to happen for his own genocidal purposes, according to Josh Fox. So that's
who needs Jew haters when you've got Jews like Josh Fox. So next, talking of.
Oh, are you going to talk about Barbara Ferrer now?
Yes.
So Barbara Ferrer, everyone will remember, one of my favourite people during the crazy time that we went through with COVID. Barbara Ferrer, you will remember, is the head of public health in Los Angeles County, which is the most populated county, I think, in America, and certainly the richest. But I think it's also, and it's our county. I think it's definitely, actually, it mightn't be the richest, but it's the most populated county, I think, in the country. Yeah. But I think what's extraordinary about Barbara Ferrer, and I've brought this up to a conscious level many times with you, is that she is the head of public health, and she is not a doctor. She is not a medical doctor now. I think she might have a doctorate in social justice.
I think she does.
And because obviously they couldn't find a medical doctor to take the job. A medical doctor wouldn't take the job. Maybe it's not paid well enough.
You couldn't. Who would work for crap public health money? Like,
well, that's true. It's only, I think it's 55. Maybe it's 60,000 a month. It's not enough, Phil. I understand that. It's not enough. So no doctor in the world was attracted to this job. No doctor
was it 600,000 a year? 700?
He's not great at the maths now, Phelan. But so no, I think it's very, very large amount of money, basically, is what it is.
50 to 60,000. Yeah, so she gets 50 to 60,000 a month to be head of public health in Los Angeles County.
But it's not a doctor.
But anyway.
Well, sure, what do doctors know?
But anyway, she's got a social justice PhD. So she decided after the Hamas attack on Israel, she sent out an email to her Department of Public Health colleagues.
Oh, yes. Well, public health issue, was it? Of some kind?
Dear DPH colleagues, I just want to extend my deepest condolences to our public health colleagues who are members of the Jewish community and who have friends and family in Israel who've been traumatized or hurt by the appalling terrorist assault and horrific violence inflicted by Hamas.
Okay.
There is no defense for these atrocities that resulted in the murder and kidnapping of hundreds and hundreds of civilians. I join with others in denouncing all acts of terrorism and send healing prayers to all who are mourning and searching for peace.
Okay.
Please know if you need support during these difficult times, you can contact our employee assistance program on 213-433-7202. Sincerely, Barbara.
Okay.
And Anne's looking at me going, why are we reading this?
I'm not sure. I don't get the point just yet.
That was that day.
That was that day.
The next
did something
day.
happen?
Next day.
Interesting.
And the subject line is yesterday. Thank you, dear DPH colleagues. Thank you for those who reached out to me to share your concerns with my message, last week, condemning the terrorist attacks in Israel. Because my message did not acknowledge the full complexity of the situation in the Middle East and note the horrifying deaths of hundreds of Palestinian civilians as a result of the actions taken by the Israeli military, my message caused pain for some colleagues.
Oh dear.
And for this, I am very sorry. My heart breaks for all Palestinian, Muslim, Israeli, Christian and Jewish families and friends that are mourning the loss of loved ones and experiencing the fear and horror of terrorism and war. In public health, we strive to lead in the pursuit of justice for all people, do we? May we stand together to end oppression, violence, terrorism and wars that destroy families and communities. Sincerely, Barbara.
My God, she's a peacemaker too.
She learned that you can't, public health does not involve condemning the murder of innocent women and children. That's not a public health matter. You have to contextualize it. So BLM, and they're another. Tell us.
BLM posted this tweet
Chicago,
very early on. BLM Chicago. They're all the same. I stand with Palestine, and you can see the hand glider there. Extraordinary, right? Now, in fairness, got a massive reaction to that, and subsequently deleted said meme.
Yeah.
However, that meme has already started to travel, and people have seen that particular meme on the back of backpacks of people who are out protesting.
Yes.
Or supporting Palestine. Just extraordinary.
But I love this. Black Lives Matter grassroots attack BLM Chicago for deleting the meme. Yes, it's like, as a bit like that thing I was saying where, remember Frank Sinatra disassociated himself from Jane Fonda's disassociation, and the Academy disassociated them from that.
Well, actually, that sort of segues beautifully into the next thing we wanted to mention, which is, as you know, and I know it's been everywhere, we've been looking at college campuses. Everyone has been kind of reporting on the kind of extraordinary reaction on college campuses, which has been in support of Palestine. There have been an incredible amount
Hamas.
And in support of Hamas, and some of very, very barefaced. So there's been a backlash, as you probably know. Harvard had a particularly strong backlash where a number of Wall Street types said, "Give us the names of all the people who have signed on to these pro-Hamas petitions, because we'd really like to not give them a job."
I just want to say something. What they should actually say is, give us the names of the people who've been funding these organizations all along. And you know what? I'll give you the name. I'll help you find those people. Go and look in the mirror, Wall Street Titans.
There you go.
What do you think where do you think your money has been going? Harvard has 40 billion of an endowment or something like that, and you're giving them money. Who do you think funds the decolonization classes and the consent classes and the DEI classes and all those other? Who do you think has been destroying?
Yeah, where do you think all this came from? It didn't come out of nowhere,
yes.
and really you weren't paying attention enough, or you just didn't care enough,
or
until
when
it really came home to roost.
Yes, really came home to roost. It doesn't matter when they were attacking white people or supporting BLM, destroying cities and killing 35 mostly black people. Didn't matter when that was happening, but when they decided to support Hamas, you thought, we can't have that. Well, the genie's out of the bottle. These institutions are rotten to the core. The most dishonest person of all, by the way, and this is for me, is Larry Summers, the former president of Harvard, who just is shocked, I tell you, to find that the gambling is going on at this institution and that they may be evil people in Harvard. Larry, you've spent the last 20 years decolonizing, making white people feel unwelcome, making sure white and Asian people couldn't get into Harvard by gaming the system. Making sure that Jewish people couldn't get in either because they were classified as white, privileged, yeah. And you gamed the system until the Supreme Court stopped you like a week ago. Gamed the system to make sure that black people, people of color, and all these other identity groups and Palestinians and all these identity, making Harvard a center of identity rather than a center of academic rigor. And what happens? They lived up to what you paid them for, Larry.
Well, I came across a story that I just had to bring to a conscious level. I just love this so much. So John Huntsman, you'll remember John Huntsman, who ran unsuccessfully for president a couple of years ago. Yes. And he is an alumni of Penn State, and the Daily Pennsylvanian has this story, and I'm just gonna read. It's just fantastic. So 1987 college graduate John Huntsman Jr. told Penn president Liz McGill that his family. So this is all just really happened in the last while, because Penn State were very bizarrely quiet. The administrator Liz, the president of Penn State, Liz McGill, was very, very quiet in the face of what had happened to the Israelis. The terrorist attack by Hamas. And so Huntsman was absolutely appalled. And he basically wrote a letter to Liz, and he called her Dear Liz, And he said that his family will stop donating to Penn, stripping the university of a long-time donor amid a backlash from influential trustees and alumni. In an email to McGill obtained by the Daily Pennsylvanian, this is from the Daily Pennsylvanian, by the way, Huntsman, a former university trustee, governor of Utah, and United States ambassador,
and presidential candidate,
said that the Huntsman Foundation will close its checkbook. Ouch! Close its checkbook on future donations to Penn. Huntsman, whose family has donated tens of millions to Penn over the course of 3 generations, wrote that the university had become almost unrecognizable due to administrators' response to anti-Semitism. Here's his quote: "Moral relativism has fueled the university's race to the bottom and sadly now has reached a point where remaining impartial is no longer an option," he wrote to McGill after a meeting of the board trustees on Friday night. So here's, I know your film is going nuts to say.
No, but didn't she then?
Oh no, I love that. We do love this. That was Saturday. Then on Sunday, shocker, stop the presses, and I'm sure no one saw this coming. Liz McGill, president of Penn State, issued a statement saying, "Oh, we just are so sympathetic to all kinds of people and everything, and
very
peace
sad.
and love.
The
whole thing is really sad. And here I am saying everything." Yeah. And I'm sure the timing, Phelim, is completely coincidental.
My timing is like...
What happened to you, John?
What happened, John? I mean,
where were you?
You were rather than funding the Gosnell movie, rather than funding the funding the Clarence Thomas documentary, rather than funding the Ferguson play that we have done, rather than funding our true crime podcast, you were funding Penn State. They've been at this for decades. Penn State, Michael Mann, whilst a professor at Penn State, suing Mark Stein and National Review, trying to impinge on his free speech for Mark Stein attacking the hockey stick and the global warming con.
Lawfare.
Yeah.
Isn't that what it's called?
Lawfare. So, what did you not write to Penn State 10 years ago when he started this attack on Mark Stein and say, a professor at Penn State should have a thicker skin. A professor at Penn State has a great venue, should publish a paper, an rigorously academic paper, saying Mark Stein is wrong. A professor at Penn State, by the way, should not be involved in the ClimateGate emails where they try and get people fired from prestigious magazines because they're not sufficiently on message. That was all happening at Penn State, Mr. Huntsman. And you said nothing, and now you think that they're a terrible place. They've been terrible for the last 20 years.
I wonder, and I question, and I said it to Phelan, and who knows people, because people are extraordinary. I'm really hoping that John Huntsman sticks to his guns and does not open his checkbook again. But who knows? Maybe he's been satisfied by Liz McGill.
That's too late. Look, there's all these tech billionaires. They can keep these universities going forever.
And they have so much money in their endowments that they never have to worry about money ever again.
Money,
just getting even a small return on these massive endowments.
Money that came from Republicans, by the way. Somebody said to me, the Republicans made things, and now the Democrats, they're becoming billionaires through tech, right? There's very few fortunes being made in people who make things now. It's all tech fortunes. So as the making things fortunes decline, they don't need to go for those. They've built the places up, and now it'll just be ticking along with these tech billions. And well done, John. You funded the destruction of America. Good man.
Watch this space.
So
we're going over to the interview you did earlier. Phil.
No, we're going to Australia.
Oh, what's happened in Australia? Oh, tell us about. Oh, yes.
Yes.
You're
Well,
right.
listen, this is a long podcast, so we'll just keep it brief. Australia's had a Trumpian moment. They had a referendum about giving Aborigines. Sounds very nice. Giving Aborigines a voice. And we saw it on the news, and it was resoundingly defeated. But it was on the BBC, and they actually couldn't tell us. They wouldn't tell us why the people had voted against it. It was people were in tears that it had been defeated.
So they interviewed people who were as Phelan says, they interviewed people who were so disappointed in the result, and it's just terrible, awful, and this terrible and so
terrible day for Australia.
And you're thinking, without like anyone anywhere, you didn't have to be some kind of genius to think, well, he's now they're going to interview somebody who's going to say, well, why I voted to change this whole system.
Didn't.
No, we're not going to have that. We're not going to hear that at all. We're not going to get any representation of that. And this is a massive sea change. So congratulations over there.
Basically, you have to go to somewhere like The Spectator or Fraser Nelson. And it's basically the same as Trump. You were told you were evil if you voted for Trump. You're told that you can't vote for Trump. You're told that Trump's going to lose. You're told it's a bit like Brexit. And the yes vote we're told said, just trust us. I know it's a bit vague, but honestly, when the no side were accused of disinformation, but funny, the no side said, yeah, we may have disinformation, but you have no information. So it was about. As one of the speakers says, Australia is a great country. You're treated the same whether you arrived at the boat 6 months ago or 60,000 years ago. They didn't want anything to do with identity politics. They didn't want to give people exalted status or lower status, and that's what they voted against. They voted against the elites. Sounds very familiar. Sounds like Brexit. So yes, we'll go over to John Nolte now. We recorded this previously with John Nolte. I just want to say one thing. It's about his new novel, Borrowed Time. We recorded this a couple of weeks ago before the recent events in Israel. We held it because Israel just became such a big story. We didn't have time for it. So John won't be talking about Israel in this. I just want to make that clear. It was recorded just before the Hamas invasion. And let's go over to that interview now where we talk about many things and his new novel, Borrowed Time. Hello. So I'm joined here now by my old friend, John Nolte. I first met John Nolte. Did I meet you, John, before Breitbart ever existed, or was it just after Breitbart existed?
It was right around that time. It was about 100 years ago. I know that.
Yes.
Hard to believe.
Are you employee number 1 or number 2 in Breitbart?
Alex Marlowe was the first employee, and he was an intern then. Now he's running the whole site, doing a great job. I was the first editor-in-chief of what is now Breitbart News. I was the editor-in-chief of the first big site, as they were called then, Big Hollywood.
Big Hollywood, yes. I remember I first met Andrew Breitbart at an event in Brentwood, Los Angeles, before big Hollywood before it was called, as he was called, the Bigs existed then. Breitbart existed, and he was telling me he was going to hire this guy, John Nolte from, was it Dirty Harry or Angry Harry? What
Yeah, it was
the
Dirty
site?
Harry's place after the Clint Eastwood character.
Anyway, for those who don't know John is a senior contributor to Breitbart News. I've said it before, I'll say it again. In my opinion, he's one of the best writers in the English language today, and I'm not exaggerating. I mean that sincerely.
Well, thank
If you
you.
want an example, so welcome to the show, John.
Appreciate you asking me on. I'm always happy to be here.
If you want an example of John's writing, go to a recent article about GLAAD, which is GLAAD is it's a gay pressure group, GLAAD, and they issue a progress report every year about how gayness is represented in the movies and how you need to do more. You always need to do more, and this is what John is so good at. This report is coming out every year, and I always look at it and I always roll my eyes, and it's just Hollywood being Hollywood. John, in his latest article, looked at it from the perspective of, well, this is them praising grooming, right? This is them promoting gayness and homosexuality, right? As they say in Seinfeld, nothing wrong with gayness, but promoting that and promoting it as something much more prominent than it is. And then John made the point, by the way, in this article, who wins the GLAAD award by far? Who is the biggest promoter of homosexuality in the movies? And it's Disney.
It's Disney. It's a children's studio aimed at little kids, not just teenagers, but little children. And out of the 49 or 59 movies that Disney released in 2022, I think 21 of them, or 24 of them, 24 had homosexuality in them, or drag queens, or transsexuals, or whatever they're doing. And Netflix tied with them, and I don't care what Netflix does with its content. It can make everything gay for all I care. I'm not going to watch it, but that's not a children's studio. Disney's a children's studio, and I am all for teaching kids to treat people who are different with kindness. I'm all for teaching kids tolerance and empathy, but you can do that, and we have been doing it in this country for a long time, without exposing them to adult sexuality. And the moment that you bring homosexuality into the equation, you're exposing kids to adult sexuality, because all of a sudden these uncomfortable questions come up, and it's totally inappropriate. And it goes beyond that. It's not just some gay character in a movie, which they shouldn't be aiming towards children. It's drag queens. It's transsexualism, and transsexualism is a horror show of mutilation and puberty blockers that destroys kids and puts them on the road to a much higher suicide rate than they would have normally. And it is out and out grooming. They are trying to turn these children into twisted little psychological wrecks so that they can take advantage of them and that they will vote a certain way. And Disney has become a company. Disney was once a company that went out of its way to protect the innocence of children. Yes. And now it's become an evil company that is determined to destroy your child's innocence, to come in between you and your child, and decide what's best for them and when.
Let's just listen to that statistic again. 24 of their 41 movies were GLAAD compliant. Now, and GLAAD compliant, by the way, is not just there's a gay character in the corner and he walks past. Right. He has to be a component part of the narrative, of the story. It has to be portrayed in a positive way. It goes beyond. This is a organization that its whole raison d'etre is young children, and they're winning the GLAAD awards. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about this because actually I want to talk about something. I want to talk about your book, right? But do you think Bob Iger has any idea? Do you think anyone reads your article and sends it to Bob Iger, who's the president of and CEO of Disney, and says, or do you think there's any feeling in Disney now? What have we done? Have we gone too far, or are they just so far in the swamp of their own putrid, self-congratulatory narcissism that they don't know an alternative opinion exists?
I think they know because they've been looking at the box office results. I mean, Disney went from a juggernaut, just a money printing machine that humiliated second place at the box office. And now everything is bombing. No one's watching your channel. When no one's watching your networks and you're making all that money, you don't have to worry about merit. You don't have to worry about pleasing the customer, because dummies like me were making companies that hate me, like Disney and CNN, rich because I wanted to watch Turner Classic Movies and I wanted to watch Fox News. And it's just a terrible system that just propped up bad companies that didn't care about merit. Streaming is merit. You have to like the content to subscribe to the content. And this is why Disney is losing billions of dollars on its streaming system as the cable TV business comes apart. So there's going to be a reckoning eventually. They're going to have to make stuff that people actually want to watch, because that's the only way they're going to make money. Because once the cable TV con comes to an end, and it's going to come to an end pretty soon because people are canceling cable and going to streaming, they're going to have to start doing some merit-based programming to attract us and to hold on to us as subscribers.
Again, this is another example of, I watch cable TV, I pay the cable bill, but you were the first journalist who spelt out what we were doing and how, as you said, I think I'm quoting you here, and it's a long time since, carriage fees are anti-American. I think you said that.
Right.
And to me, I love it when a journalist just says something, makes you stop and go, he's right. I know this, but he's right. And so, as you say, you watch Fox News, you watch, Walking Dead or something, and you don't watch all these channels. But because of carriage fees, the cable company is taking our bill and paying Disney for ABC and all the other channels, and they're getting that channel, even though I never watch it. I'm paying for them, even though I never once watch them, or watch them once a year. And that's how they were making tens of billions of dollars a year. Is that right?
Yeah, I think Disney was making 40 or 60 billion a year 10 years ago, just off of, and nobody watches the Disney Channel. Look at the ratings. It gets like 100,000 viewers, but they're making a fortune. The only reason CNN is alive is these carriage fees. CNN could not survive on merit, and merit is either a streaming service, and we know how long that lasted at CNN. It lasted 4 weeks, and they got rid of it. Or merit is you make money based on advertising rates, which is based on the number of people who watch. Nobody watches CNN. CNN could never survive without the cable game. And now that cable is dying, thank heaven, all of these chickens are going to come home to roost. Now, I think they're going to try and figure out a way to bundle streaming, where if you want to stream Netflix, you're going to have to subscribe to Disney and Paramount Plus and these others. I think they're going to find a way to do that. They're going to try to do that. I just hope people don't fall for it.
Look, we could talk about this all day, but we're here for a different reason. We're here to talk about your new novel, your first novel, Borrowed Time by John Nolte. I suppose, what's a nice guy like you doing writing novels? Why did you decide to write a novel? I mean, every journalist probably thinks they have a novel in them. Why did you do it?
It was an idea that started out as a mental exercise in my head. I think boredom is a good thing. I think one of the downfalls of the iPhone is that we're not bored anymore. And when you're bored, you're forced to think. And I think thinking makes you wiser and introspective, and it also helps you be more creative. And so I like to be bored. If I drive, I don't turn the radio on. I don't look at the phone when I'm in bed. And over the years, I just was thinking about what it would be like to be immortal, a guy like me, an everyday guy, not a superhero or a vampire. And I thought there'd be 3 things that would interest me about it. And I wasn't even thinking about writing a story at the time, but it was, how would I hide in a country that is increasingly forcing us into a corner with cameras and digital money and social security numbers and phones that track you everywhere. I wonder what it would be like emotionally to know that you're going to watch everything you love die, And then I wonder what it would be like at the very end. It's eventually the universe is going to come apart. So what's going to happen to an immortal guy when that happens? Someone might have answered these questions in a story, but I've never seen it. It's always a vampire, superhero, or something.
Those are very, very interesting. And just to give people the idea of the plot here, I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, you're right. I mean, that's one of the cruxes of the book is he was able to survive for thousands of years, hundreds of years, because he could just uproot and move to another city or another country, whatever. But with the surveillance state and the tracking of people and fingerprints and all that, it becomes increasingly difficult to reinvent yourself. It becomes increasingly difficult to hide. So that is one of the cruxes of this novel. Sorry, keep going. You were going to say something there.
No, go ahead. That's a good point. And that's just one of the ways I use, and I don't do it in a partisan way. I don't do it because I didn't want to write a partisan. I didn't want to, everything's political. You know that you're an artist. Everything's political. Leave It to Beaver is political. But everything doesn't have to be rhetoric. Everything doesn't have to be dogma. But it is using what you just mentioned is one of the ways that I try to explore today's society. So I had that idea in my head, and I created this guy in my head, and I kind of understood his circumstance, and he's stuck on this little motel in the desert, and that's kind of where he can hide out because he doesn't age, and people would notice he doesn't age. And now he's married to a woman that he loves, and she's dying of old age. His worst nightmare is coming true in that regard. And then I came up with the idea that he would, because his life was his renewable resource, he could sell his life. He could make money selling his life to depraved rich people. Mm-hmm. And that's how he would make money, because he would always come back. So the story kicks off, basically, the second act kicks off when he gets messed up with the wrong people, the wrong rich people. And I just take it from there. And it was when I came up with that idea that I thought, this might be worth writing. And I started writing it about 6-7 years ago as a screenplay, which was a mistake because I'm not a good screenwriter. But then more ideas came. And then I thought this is only going to work as a novel. Mm-hmm. So I started writing. But it was, you're a creative guy. The real reason I wrote it is because the story would not let me go. I did not want to write a book. I didn't want to give up all that TV time writing a book. I got enough to do in front of the computer. But the story just wouldn't let go of me, and I had to write it down. I never dreamed I'd finish it. I never dreamed it would be something I'd be proud of, and I certainly never dreamed it would be published. But it all worked out, and I'm proud of the work, and so far the reaction's really good.
Yeah, I think that's you hit the nail on the head there. Sometimes the story is annoying you so much it's easier to write it. You have to. It's taking you over. You need to get it on the page so that you can get it out of your mind. You're right. It's not, funny, if anyone one of the few people who might not know you or your work who are listening to this, will think, oh, it's John Nolte. It's bombastic. It's rhetorical. It's funny. It is funny, but it'll be heavily political. It's just to tell people it's not heavily political. That doesn't mean it doesn't have things to say, but it's not. Right. It's not political, It's not. It's not a series of Fox News hits,
It's not an editorial in any way. And I had some left-wing friends of mine read it. Believe it or not, I have left-wing friends. And I didn't tell them anything beforehand. I just said, would you look at this for me? And they were happy to do it. And then when they were done, I said, well, did anything bother you? And they said, no. They said, no, it didn't. You don't. Because I think that it would have been hypocritical for me because I've been yelling at Hollywood for years because they break the spell with rhetoric and they just intrude on the story, and you want to just lose yourself in the story. That's why we go to the movies. And I worked very hard not to do that. Mm-hmm. And so far, no one has said that I have done it. So I feel like I accomplished that goal. I think the most important thing a storyteller can do is cast a spell. And my only goal was to write a page turner. Everything was geared towards that. And then I think the biggest sin a storyteller can make is breaking the spell. And we see that all the time now. Totally. And it's just heartbreaking.
Totally. As I think I was saying off air, I'm in Ireland at the moment, but I was watching, there's a great show on Irish television now called Obituary, right? And it's about it's a dark comedy, kind of Dexterish, and it's about a woman who works for a small Irish newspaper writing the obituaries, and because of the downturn, she's put on a per obituary rate, right? And she needs the money for her father, and so she's only paid per obituary, and people aren't dying quick enough for her. So she's going around like Dexter, killing the bad people in the town, so that she can write nice things about them and get paid. Right. So it's and the first episode was hilarious, and then the second episode was very good last night. And just in the middle of it, there's this woman, one of the evil women who she's going to kill because she's not. And one of the big reasons she has to be killed is because she's anti-abortion. And I'm going, no, don't do that. Don't destroy my story. And it's not I don't care about her offending my politics. You've just taken me out of this weirdly absurdist, surreal situation, right? I know it's not true. I know it's not real life. I know that even local papers don't have obituary writers anymore, right? Nothing's true, but then you bring in this prominent, real Irish political question and just slam it in her face. And I'm going, no. And she broke the spell, or the writer broke the spell.
Yeah, they have to step in and make a statement. And there are a lot of great directors whose politics I don't agree with, but I love their movies. I love Oliver Stone because I think that even when he's trying to make a big political point, he's working in themes that are universal. I think JFK is about finding the truth. And I think Platoon is about a young man choosing between good, the William Dafoe character, and evil, the Tom Berenger character. And that's why those movies still work. I think Spike Lee, he can go off the rails sometimes, but he's also made some terrific movies, even though I find his politics obnoxious. So there's a way to do it where you get caught in the spell, and you're not looking at that stuff. But that talent seems to be dying very quickly. Yeah. Everything sucks now, and it's so. And even if you're watching something and maybe it's not political, you just sit there waiting for it, and that takes away the enjoyment.
I know. But I was so disappointed. Look, it was just we're stuck in this surreal Irish village, that doesn't exist, and it was called Ballygo Backwards. I can't remember what it was called, and I was just enjoying being caught up in it. And then they just throw in this modern, it's like saying, she supports Kevin McCarthy. I was like, no, it's not. It's definitely not rhetorical. It's not political. If anything, you try and find the best in everyone, even the bad people. You try and make the bad characters interesting. You try and make us understand their motivations. It's very well rounded, the book.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's a big compliment coming from you. I mean, you and Anne have accomplished so much, so I appreciate that. And it's one of the. I remember I was trying to write a character in the book, Zoe, the sheriff, and I thought, well, I'm going to make this character me. I'm going to give her my ideas. And I thought that'd be sort of subversive because she's a Black woman. And so I wrote the character. And by this time, she comes in the second half of the book. I'd written a bunch of characters that I was happy with. And I wrote this character. And then I go back the next day and I read the page or two. And it stinks. And I'm like, what's going on here? So I jazz up the language. I jazz up the prose. And then I come back a couple of days later and it still stinks. And then I had writer's block because I didn't know what I was doing wrong. So I stepped away for a couple of weeks, and then it hit me that I'd created a Mary Sue because in my arrogance, because I'm so perfect, I made her perfect, and she was boring as hell.
Yes.
And it was only when I started to add flaws to her pride and the mistakes that she had made through life, that she came alive. And it's the same; it goes both ways.
Yep.
Your hero, my protagonist, Joshua Mason, who's immortal, his flaw is the same as his virtue. He wants to protect his family, but it's that desire to protect his family that he makes all these mistakes. And what I did with the evil characters, it's the same thing. If I make them one-dimensional, they're no fun at all. So, the character I loved writing more than any other was Ernest, who's this monstrous, terrible monster. but he was just a blast to write because, and he was easy to write. He can't, I don't know what that says about me, about a child rapist, but he came to me and he was fun to write because he was a real person. So and I also think that making a monster human, it makes their behavior all the more chilling.
Brian Godawa wrote the My Son Hunter movie, right? And if we give him one instruction, and not an instruction, we want one thing. We said, here's the facts. Make a movie. Make an entertaining movie. Make an entertaining script out of that. But one thing we said was, we don't want Hunter Biden to be a stock villain. We don't want him to be evil. We don't want him to be, this monster, right? Because where's the fun in that? But why would you care then? Bad person being bad at the beginning, bad person being bad at the end. Where's the fun in that? So, and Brian was very good. Hunter had a tough life, and he had a tough father and tough upbringing, and privilege is a tough upbringing as much as poverty sometimes.
Sure it is. Yeah.
And and he had these opportunities to break out of that. He did, and we presented them. Brian presented them brilliantly within the script, and he didn't take them. Right.
There was a pathos to him that made him human. He was doing all these terrible things, and he was and I always feel bad for addicts, because I don't think anybody sets out to be an addict. So you gave him a pathos that made him very human. Plus, he's your protagonist. I mean, people have to stay with him. I remember I learned this was watching the movie Downfall, the Hitler movie that came out about 20 years ago. Bruno Ganz, just a brilliant portrayal. And every portrayal of Hitler was him screaming and spitting and manic and one-dimensional, because that's the cartoon character. But Downfall portrayed Hitler as a human being. He loved his dog. He was nice to his secretaries. He was like an old grandpa. And then you compare that to what he did, and all of a sudden the horror, because it's what if he's a one-dimensional villain, you think, well, that can't happen because people aren't like that. But when they're human, like you made Hunter, or like Bruno Ganz made Hitler, that really makes the horror of what they did come home, because you think, gosh, how many degrees of difference am I from these people?
Yeah. Well, so that's why, so you made your bad characters human. You made all the characters are human, and they're not funny. I don't see John Nolte in any of them. Which is good.
That's good, because I'm not a very interesting character at all.
Well, I would disagree with that. So, okay, look, there's so much to talk about. What do you hope people will get out of this book? Let's talk. So the plot is this guy can live forever, and he has a stepson who has been
right,
traumatic injury, is brain damaged, and his wife is dying because she gets old and he doesn't, so he's dying, and they're running this out of the way motel that's not making any money. In fact, it's losing money. And that was another thing I appreciated what you did, was because Anne and I were discussing the characters, and Anne was saying, if only he'd invested money, back then, or bought something. And I'm going, yeah, but how do you know back then? Always, even what do you call the character? Highlander. He's rich in modern day New York. All the characters, they're always rich. These people who can live forever because they know things. But of course, what if you're just a Joe Schmo who doesn't know, who lives his life and doesn't know the internet's going to come, so you don't buy Apple Mac shares, back 30 years ago. You're just a guy, he's an ordinary guy who has money problems, but he has big problems now. And as you say, the only thing, and by the way, Charlie, his grandson, is a complex character. Is not as simple as we think either. And he the only marketable thing is that he will never die, so rich men can kill him. I mean, what do you hope readers will get out of this, or do you just write it for their entertainment? What what do you think the story behind the story of this book is?
Mainly, I just wanted to put my money where my mouth is. I mean, I could have written a nonfiction book. I could have written 99 Reasons CNN Sucks and probably sold a lot more copies because that's just the world we live in. I'm not going to make any money. I might make $11 or something on the book. There's no money in fiction. But I just wrote it to put my money where my mouth is, to say, okay, we're tired of Hollywood not coming up with original stories. Mm-hmm. So I tried to write an original story. And like you said, my guy's not rich. I haven't seen that before. And over again throughout the book, whenever I got stuck, I would say to myself, okay, my bad idea, like my original idea for Charlie, he was basically Lenny from Of Mice and Men. And that was a great idea in 1930, but it's not so good now. It's been used a million times. So what I would do when I got stuck is I would say, okay, maybe the opposite of my terrible idea is a good idea. And all of a sudden, Charlie just blew up into something amazing and took me straight through to the end of the book. And if I hadn't come up with Charlie, I wouldn't have written the book. And the same thing with him not having any money. And he's not part of history. He's not Forrest Gumping through history like you see again and again. So I wanted to write an original story. And I hope I did that. I hope people read this and say, well, I've never read something like this before. And then the other thing I wanted to do, and I think this because you're an artist, is that hopefully people will take it home with them. They'll think about the characters a little bit and maybe some of the themes they'll turn over in their head. I tried to walk that fine line where you don't provide all the answers, but not in a way that frustrates people, that allows them to, sort of turn it over in their head as they're walking out to the parking lot if it was a movie. And that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to write a story that would suck people in, and they'd think about it a little bit afterwards, and they'd say, okay, that was worth my time. That was worth my $20. And that was my only ambition. And really, that's a pretty big ambition if you think about it. But beyond that, I don't want to change the way anyone votes. I don't care about any of that stuff. I do that, if I want to change the way people vote, but I've got a huge platform at Breitbart to do that. I didn't need to use the book for that.
Would I be right in saying, is it a modern day Western, or is that just because I'm not from America, so I wouldn't be as imbued with the Western, the idea of Western culture and the Western.
I definitely wanted to give it. See, I don't read a lot of fiction, so I'm a movie guy. So my inspiration was really for the book was Western. That's why I set it in the Southwest and in the desert. And Joshua Mason is sort of the classic loner cowboy who tries not to get involved, and then everything goes sideways when he does get involved. And in this case, he falls in love with his wife. And that's the beginning of all his problems. Yes. And that's a very classic Western. And then the language of the book, I wanted to keep it as simple as possible because that's a Western feel, but also try to give, I'm not saying I accomplished this, but the goal was to give it an elegance too through its simplicity. And you see that in a lot of Westerns where, even though the characters are using simple, I don't use words like I reckon. I didn't do anything like that because I think that would have sounded silly in this book. But just the simplicity of the language. I didn't, I wasn't trying to impress anyone with my thesaurus skills.
Oh, well, thank God for that, because that kills many a great piece of writing. And I mean that, I say this often, and I must find out who the original quote is, but the quote is, it's easy to be clever, but the clever thing is to be simple. And simple is hard. Simple is really hard. You say the book isn't political, or you don't want to change the way people vote, but there is an attitude in the book, isn't there? There's an underlying theme of the modern world. I'm picking up some kind of commentary on modern life, good, evil, even God and morality. There's a moral backbone to the book, is there? Or is that just me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not. I would read. Just to use the word political. It's so loaded. I'm always afraid to use it. But like I said, Leave It to Beaver is political. Leave It to Beaver is saying to you, this is how a healthy family behaves. So in that sense, is Borrowed Time political? Sure it is. It has a lot to say about the modern world. I deliberately made my protagonist, Mason, the ultimate individual, because I believe if I had a political philosophy, it would be individualism. I think everyone should be able to live their lives however they want, as long as they don't bother anyone else. You want to be a gay Satan worshiper? I don't care. Just don't throw your beer cans in my yard. And so I wanted to make him the ultimate individual in two ways. Number one, there's no one else like him. And number two, he has something everyone else wants, and that's immortality, or thinks they want. So I pit him against the modern world, and through the modern world and what he has to deal with, I make the modern world an antagonist. That, and part of the story that's always blocking him from what he wants to do. And in that respect, I try to talk about how it is getting more and more difficult to be your own man in the United States. It's not just the digital money and the social security numbers and all the government forms and all the other ways that we're tracked now. It's just this conformist culture, and a culture where people believe that just because you got something, they're entitled to it. So that's definitely part of it. I have a lot to say about, our relationship with God, and how different people struggle with that. So yeah, there are definitely good and evil too. So those thematic elements are in there, and yeah, I guess you could call those political, but not. It's not rhetoric. It's not dogma.
By the way, can I just say we listened to a lot of the book on Audible. I think it was the narrator is superb.
He did a great job, didn't he?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, to anyone out there, I urge you to go and buy Borrowed Time by John Nolte. If you have to make a choice between the book and the Audible, buy the Audible if you can, if that's the way you listen to books or read books, because it adds so much. When I first heard the voice, I was thinking, "Oh, John's not narrating it. I wish John was narrating it." Then he's brilliant.
Yeah, he did. And he was actually my first review outside of my family, because he reached out to me on Facebook to tell me how much he enjoyed the book. So we've gotten friendly since then. And then I haven't listened to the whole book yet, but I listened to a good part of it. And I was very, very happy with the job he did. He really added a lot to it. And it seems like it'd be very fun to listen to in the car.
Thank you very much, John, for coming on the show. We could talk all day. The book is Borrowed Time by John Nolte, Nolte. You can buy it on Amazon or wherever you get your books. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not in bookstores. Those days are over, but you can get it online at Barnes & Noble and at Amazon. I'm sure there's Target. I think it's at Target, but it's out there. And I want to make everyone a guarantee. I'm guaranteeing this to everyone. If you buy the book and you don't like it, I'm giving you 100% guarantee that any money I make off your purchase, it will go towards increasing the size of my Blu-ray collection. It's the least I can do.
Yes, that's another thing John Nolte is great about. Buy hard copies of your art, because the cancel mob are going to destroy it. And they do that. They're doing that they're destroying sitcoms from the 70s. They're editing them. They're editing sitcoms from the 80s. They're even in Britain. They edited a series called Little Britain, which was from the noughties. Buy your hard copy and hold dear. How do people get you on Twitter, John? What's your Twitter handle?
It's at Nolte, NOLTENC, which stands for North Carolina, Nolte NC. I'm all over Twitter.
Okay, John, thank you very much, and we will talk again.
Yeah, look forward to it, and please say hello to Anne for me. I missed her.
I think people need to, Breitbart. Go to Breitbart and read John Nolte. I mean, John Nolte is really, really worth reading. He always has a unique take on things. He has a lovely light touch. He is, as you say, Phil, a brilliant writer.
Yes,
extremely talented, and we just love him.
And his book is called Borrowed Time, and it's the end of the show.
And just to remind everyone that our exhibition opens on Friday in Ohio. Please donate to make journalism like this happen, because we can't do it without you.
Yes. If you want information about it, go to evidencetheexhibition.com. It's in the short north area of Ohio. You'll get all the details at evidencetheexhibition.com, including the opening hours. Please, there's a level of professionalism in this exhibition that you will you will love. The left will hate it. They tried to suppress this story by refusing to cover the Gosnell trial. Remember that. And now they will try and suppress this. But this is facts. This is evidence. This is crime scene photographs.
This is very pure journalism, by the
Yes.
way. It's absolutely pure journalism. All these photographs were taken by crime scene detectives, by the FBI, by the CSI, by the DEA, and by the medical examiner.
Yeah.
So please support us and help us bring this around the country.
Unreportedstorysociety.com. Thank you and good day. Bye.